Okay? And first we're going to look at graphically, then a table, and then the equation. So with graphically, x-intercepts are just going to be where it's crossing the x-axis. So we can see that this one is crossing the x-axis at -3 and +1. So this one has x-intercepts. So the x-intercepts are at, and we're going to write these as x values. So it's crossing the x-axis at x equals -3 and at x equals 1. Okay, now looking at the table, the x-intercepts are occurring whenever the y value is equal to 0. So since we're saying whenever the y value is equal to 0, you can also think about it as it's an x value. So one of them has to be 0, that's why it's on the x-axis. So we're looking at where the y value is equal to 0. And this is actually occurring at 2 points. It's occurring at 2, 0, and at -4, 0. So there are 2 x-intercepts here. And these x-intercepts are at x equals 2 and x equals -4. Now you can write these as coordinates. You're not going to see it written that way as often, but we could write it as, here we could write 2, 0, and -4, 0. So you could write it that way, but like I said, most of the time it's going to be an x value. So x equals 2, x equals -4. All right, now let's look at our equation, and we are going to type this into Desmos as well. So let's go back to Desmos, and we're going to have x squared plus 5x plus 6. Okay, and Desmos does show you all the important points. I'm just going to zoom in here. We can see these little gray dots. Here's the y-intercept, and we have our minimum here, but we're going to be looking at our x-intercepts. So this is our x-axis is crossing at -3 and -2. So these are going to be our x-intercepts. So the x-intercepts are at x equals -3 and x equals -2. Okay, let's move on to our y-intercepts. Graphically, we're just looking at where this crosses the y-axis. So this first one here is crossing the y-axis. So the y-intercept is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is crossing at y equals 5 because we're looking at a y value. We're looking at a value on the y-axis. Okay, let's look at the table. So on the table, since this is a y value, that kind of tells you that we're looking where x is equal to 0. So we can see our x-intercept here because we have the x value with the y value being 0, but we really want the y-intercept, so where the x value is equal to 0. And this is happening here at 0, -1, or we could say the y-intercept is at y equals -1. Okay, and you can say it as a coordinate as well, so we can say or 0, -1. Okay, and let's look at our equation. We are just going to type this guy into Desmos. So we're going to have 5x squared plus 7x plus 4. And we can see that it's crossing the y-axis here at +4. So we can say the y-intercept is at y equals 4, or we could say it's at the coordinate 0, 4. You're going to see it most often as y equals the y-intercept, but sometimes you will see it as a coordinate, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so here we have this little note. X-intercepts are written as x equals a number, which is kind of convenient because we have x-intercepts being an x value. And then likewise, y-intercepts are written as y equals a number. Both can be written as coordinates, but most of the time we're going to see it as x equals a number and y equals a number.